The truth will set you free. The truth will set you free.
Did you know that when we are dismissive or belittling of someone, we are actually having an intellectual problem? I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Right now I'm going to attempt to examine the Bible and dissect some of the churchy language we can really easily take for granted, digging into history and languages, as I'm able anyway, to try and get at the heart of the text so that we can hopefully see and then apply at least some of what God has for you and me in His Word today. Now, I'm not formally trained in Scripture. I'm just a guy using resources and a questioning mind to try and get at the truth. That's something that we can all do, so I hope you'll do that with me. We're making our way through the book of Proverbs. We've arrived this time at Proverbs chapter 11, verses 12 and 13, which in the ESV says, "Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. Whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered." Now, verses 12 and 13 are the first two in a set of 4 proverbs focused on speech and communication. These are the kinds of proverbs I personally wish appeared on screen in front of all of us when we sat down to write an email or a social media post. Verse 12 again says, "Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent." The idea behind belittling one's neighbor in the Hebrew here is about despising someone, which in this Hebrew word can include those we don't personally know, having contempt for them or seeing them as insignificant. Today we would probably use the term dehumanize. Although the context focuses on speech, the Hebrew word is about an attitude of the heart towards someone else, an attitude that disregards someone's value and significance, categorizing them lower in worth than ourselves. Someone with this attitude lacks sense, meaning here that they are thoughtless in their attitude. They have turned their brain off. This perfectly describes my thought content when I fall into frustration with someone, especially someone I don't know personally, like a public figure. In moments of frustration, I can sort of dismissively categorize them according to some demographic they fall into, such as a particular worldview that they adhere to. It's a knee-jerk reaction I need to try and quickly correct in myself whenever it happens, because in those moments I am being senseless and failing to consider them as an individual person with a whole life that I know very little about, and someone with immense worth, someone made in the image of God and loved enough by God to die for. When we remember to factor in the value Scripture teaches every person has, we shift paths from one lacking sense to being a person of understanding, as the second half of the proverb describes it. Understanding here refers to the faculty itself of understanding, intelligence, and insight, which should make this especially of interest to a lot of geeks. Many geeks also have gifted intellects and enjoy learning, reading, and deep thinking more than the average person. And part of how Scripture implicitly describes true intelligence and insight here is through a recognition of the inherent value of each individual. Did you notice that? It's the opposite of belittling them. That's what a senseless person does, is they demote their value in their mind. Whoever belittles his neighbor lacks sense, but a man of understanding remains silent. Why does he remain silent? Implicitly, it's because he does not belittle or devalue his neighbor. He mentally holds on to the truth of their worth and their significance. I think it's so interesting that the reason for not belittling people here is because one has understanding rather than because they are being kind or loving. Now, I think we should withhold dismissive attitudes toward others out of love, but it makes so much sense that it would start with some truth, some point of understanding we need to reflect on and factor in, namely, in this case, the value of others. Although we may value the intellect as geeks, we can selectively turn it on and off. We are turning our faculty of understanding off when we are dismissive of other people, including people who are abrasively loudmouthed and promoting falsehood. And turning off our brains in those moments often leads to our dehumanizing thoughts becoming dismissive, insulting, or dehumanizing words, whether in person or online. Instead, we are to keep our brains turned on, remembering all truth, including the value of each individual. and remaining silent when we would otherwise choose to express something that is meant to verbally demote someone else. Okay, verse 13, whoever goes about slandering reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy in spirit keeps a thing covered. The Hebrew word for slandering is also translated as a talebearer, one who goes about as a talebearer or an informer. The concept here is of someone who they go about looking for opportunities to share what was intended to be private. And the contrasting second half of the proverb highlights that this person is not worthy of trust. A person who is worthy of trust keeps private matters concealed. So how do we navigate this when we are concerned about someone else and we want prayer or counsel about their private situation from a third party? We want to be trustworthy, but we also want wise advice in thinking about how we can help that person. I think first we should ask how urgent and necessary it is for us to become involved and acquire wisdom from a third party in order to do that, to become involved in a deeper way. Obviously, we're already involved from them sharing some things with us, but if we want to get involved in a deeper way and have some advice to bring with us to that, how urgent and necessary is that really? Second, can we get prayer and counsel about a private situation in a way that does not in any way reveal or even hint at the identity of those we're referring to? We got to be careful about this. Sometimes I think we can tell ourselves we're speaking in generalities, but we are also kind of teasing, we're skirting the edge. You know, we've got something in the mix there that's enjoying walking that fine line. So I think we need to be careful and think about whether or not we're able to do this in a way that doesn't reveal or even hint at the identity of those we're referring to. And that kind of leads into that kind of struggle, that internal motive questioning that I just talked about. That leads to the most relevant aspect of this proverb. Is there any part of us, we need to ask, that wants to share a private matter with a third party because we want to be favorably compared to someone else? Oh man, they have got some sin going on here. I don't have that sin going on. Let me tell this other person about this sin, Or maybe we want an interesting topic to talk about, or we want to see the reaction that we will get from sharing this private thing. In these cases, we are falling into the role of the talebearer that's frowned upon in verse 13. And in these cases, we're really devaluing the person who has trusted us, sacrificing their reputation for the sake of improving our own by comparison, or in order to be interesting to others in conversation, or for the sake of our own entertainment. When we say it out loud and describe our motives for sharing private matters in those terms, it really sounds like just kind of outrageous and disgusting. And we might think to ourselves, well, I never have that motive. But there can be this enticing feeling that leads us to want to share something we just heard, something we just learned from someone else. And I think it's that enticing feeling that we've got to identify and recognize for what it is. That's something about our own gratification, something about our own favorable comparison in the eyes of others, something else going on there than actual love and concern for that person we're about to talk about. Being trustworthy with private matters of another person is more than just an issue of integrity. It really, as Jesus tells us is the case with all commands, boils down to love. It's really an issue of sacrificial love as we willingly join in the largely solitary wrestling of those who share delicate matters with us. If you would like some help finding a good church in your area, I would love to help you do that if I can. Online resources and communities are good supplements, but by their very nature, they can't speak to your particular situation like relationships in a local church can. The context for almost everything in the New Testament assumes that we are serving and building purposeful relationships in a local church. So whether you're in a church that lacks Bible-based intentionality or maybe not attending any church at all right now, if I can help you get connected to an authentic, compassionate, Bible-oriented church, I would love to do that. Email me, please, paeter@spiritblade.com, and we can try to look at some websites of churches in your area together.